Hey guys, tonight we are slipping back in time, further than the pharaohs, further than the first papyrus scroll. We're going to a quieter, wilder Egypt. Imagine for a moment that you're there, standing on the bank of the life-giving Nile. The air is thick and heavy with the smell of wet earth, lotus blossoms, and the dry, dusty scent of the desert just beyond the reeds. The only sounds are the lapping of water and the ceaseless, hypnotic thrum of a million insects. It's a peaceful scene, but don't get too comfortable. Let's be honest, dropped into this world with your modern immune system and a distinct lack of crocodile dung sunscreen, you probably wouldn't survive the week. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as always, I'd love to see where and when you're tuning in from. So drop your city and local time in the comments below. It's always a treat to see how far our little corner of the internet reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your world is small, defined by the rise and fall of the river and the sun. You are standing in the Black Land, the Kemet, a ribbon of impossible fertility stitched into the vast, red emptiness of the desert. The year is, well, there are no years. Not in the way you think of them. There is only this season, the season of Shimu, the harvest time, when the waters have long receded and the ground is cracked and dry. Your feet, bare and calloused, know the texture of this land better than you know your own face, which you have only ever seen as a shimmering, distorted reflection in a clay water jar. Life is a simple, grinding rhythm of survival. You eat grain, pounded into a coarse flour and baked into a flat, gritty bread. You eat fish from the river, dried and salted. You eat the lentils and onions you've managed to grow in your small plot of land. It is sustenance. It keeps the heart beating and the muscles working. But it is not a joy. Joy, true, soul-lifting joy, is a rarer commodity. It is the taste of a ripe fig, a handful of dates, or the rarest prize of all, honey. You don't keep bees. No one you know does. To you, bees are not livestock. They are a mystery, tiny winged spirits of the sun, fierce and untouchable. They are the guardians of a treasure that can make a child weep with happiness and an old man remember his youth. And today, you have decided to seek that treasure. This isn't a casual decision, like wandering to the pantry for a snack. This is a hunt, a dangerous, calculated risk undertaken maybe a few times a year when the craving for sweetness becomes an ache you can no longer ignore. You begin by walking away from the river towards the low cliffs that mark the edge of the valley. The air grows hotter, the green fading to ochre and beige. Your eyes are not on the ground, scanning for snakes, but in the air. You are looking for them, the tiny navigators, tracing their invisible pathways between the sparse desert flowers. And their hidden home. You find a patch of acacia, its yellow, fluffy blossoms a magnet for pollinators. You wait. Patience is not a virtue here. It's a fundamental tool of survival. You stand as still as the stones around you, letting the sun beat down on your linen wrap, feeling the sweat trickle down your temples, and then you see it. One bee, then another, lifting from a blossom, their legs heavy with yellow pollen. They rise, circle once, and then shoot off in a remarkably straight line. A beeline, you might call it, if you had a word for such a thing. You mark the direction, a specific notch in the distant cliff face. This is your first clue. You walk, and you watch, and you listen. The hunt has begun. It's a well-established fact that our ancestors have been doing this for an almost unimaginable length of time. Rock art from tens of thousands of years ago, found across Africa and into Europe, clearly shows figures climbing rickety ladders, shrouded in smoke, to raid the hives of wild bees. This is not a new invention. It is an ancient, primal dance between man and bee, a tradition you carry in your very bones. You spend hours tracking them, moving from one flowering bush to the next, watching the flight paths converge. The sun is high now, punishingly so. Your water skin is half empty. You could give up, return to the reliable monotony of the village. But the thought of that golden, fragrant liquid, the way it coats the tongue and explodes with the flavor of 1,000 flowers, pushes you onward. Finally, you find the place. It's not a grand, obvious hive hanging from a branch. It is subtle, a small fissure in the limestone cliff, about twice the height of a man from the ground. A faint, dark stain marks the rock below it, and a steady, quiet stream of bees flows in and out of the opening. The air around it seems to shimmer, and you can hear a low, deep hum, a vibration that you feel in your chest more than you hear with your ears. It is the sound of 1,000 tiny heartbeats, 1,000 pairs of wings, a unified life force guarding its precious stores. Now comes the most dangerous part. You have no protective suit, no fancy veil with a wide-brimmed hat. Your only protection is knowledge and smoke. You've gathered a bundle of dry rushes and, from a pouch at your waist, a piece of dried crocodile dung. It's a quirky but essential part of your toolkit. It smolders slowly and produces a thick, acrid smoke that, for reasons you don't understand, seems to confuse and pacify the bees more effectively than simple wood smoke. It's a piece of folk wisdom that works, and in your line of work, results are all that matter. You light the bundle and let it smolder, the pungent smoke stinging your own eyes. With the smoking torch in one hand and a sharpened stone in the other, you begin to climb. The limestone is rough and provides good holds for your hardened feet and fingers. With each foot you gain, the hum from the crevice grows louder, more insistent. It changes from a background thrum to a very personal, very direct warning. You are an invader. You are a thief. The bees know this. As you near the opening, a few guards fly out to investigate, circling your head with an angry, high-pitched buzz. You hold the smoking torch up, bathing them in the gray cloud. They become disoriented, bumping into each other and the rock face before retreating. You take a deep breath and press on. Reaching the fissure, you peer inside. In the dim light, you can just make out the pale, waxy forms of the combs built directly onto the rock. They are beautiful, a perfect architecture of hexagons filled with shimmering gold. The smell that wafts out is intoxicating, a complex perfume of nectar, pollen, warm wax, and the bees themselves. It smells like life. You use your stone tool to gently pry and cut at the edges of the first comb, trying to break it free. This is the moment of truth. The smoke can only do so much. The disturbance sends a wave of vibration through the colony, and the hum inside explodes into a roar. Bees pour from the opening, a living tide of fury. They find the gaps in your smoke screen. You feel the first sharp, fiery prick on your arm, then another on your neck. You grit your teeth and ignore the pain. Panic is your greatest enemy now. A fall from this height would be the end. You work faster, your movements precise despite the agony of the stings. You know you can only take so much before the venom overwhelms you. Finally, a large section of comb breaks free. You carefully grasp the sticky, heavy treasure. It's warm, alive with the heat of the colony. You can't carry it and climb down safely. So you do what your grandfather taught you to do. You stuff a large piece of the comb, wax, honey, and all into your mouth. The sweetness is overwhelming, a shocking burst of flavor that momentarily eclipses the pain of the stings. You then take the rest of the comb and carefully tuck it into the leather pouch at your hip, knowing much of it will be crushed, but it's better than nothing. Your descent is faster, less careful. The bees pursue you, a furious cloud of righteous indignation. You leap the last few feet to the ground, ignoring the jolt in your ankles, and run, not stopping until the angry buzzing has faded behind you. You collapse, breathing heavily, your body on fire with dozens of stings. But in your pouch is the prize, and in your memory is the taste of pure, wild, sun-drenched sweetness. This single act separates you from your distant descendants. You are not just a consumer of honey, you are a hunter of it. Historians still argue whether this precarious dance of honey hunting gave way to a more passive bee-having, where a family might claim and protect a wild hive in a cliff or a hollow tree year after year, long before the first clay pots were ever purposefully set out to lure a swarm. Perhaps you are one of those first proto-beekeepers, marking this cliff as your own, a secret to be passed down to your children. For now, though, you are just a man with a pouch full of crushed honeycomb and a face beginning to swell, walking home in the fading light, already dreaming of the next hunt. The throbbing pain from the stings begins to fade, a dull ache that you barely notice as you share the precious, crushed honeycomb with your family. The overwhelming sweetness is a celebration, a momentary shield against the hardness of life. You sleep, And in your sleep, that memory of the golden comb, the angry buzz, the searing sun on the limestone cliff begins to soften. It becomes a story you tell your children, a lesson in courage and reward. And as you sleep, the world turns. The sun rises and sets 1,000 times, and then 10,000 more. Generations live and die on the black soil by the river. The story of the honey hunt, once a personal memory of survival, becomes a legend, then a craft, then a science. The world you wake up in is not the same one you left. The frantic, desperate scrabble for sweetness has been tamed. The wild, unknowable spirit of the bee has been invited into your world, given a home. You are no longer a hunter, cowering from the bee's fury. You are a keeper, a partner. The relationship has changed, and so has the land around you. The scattered villages of mud and reed have coalesced into a civilization powered by a new, radical idea: the divine king, the pharaoh, Horus on earth. And this king, a god in his own right, demands that the world be orderly, prosperous, and eternal. To ensure this, he builds monuments not of mud, but of everlasting stone. You find yourself standing on a sandy plateau at a place called Abu Ghorab. The sun is, as always, a powerful presence, but here it feels different. It feels focused. Before you rises one of these monuments, a temple dedicated not to a god in human or animal form, but to the sun itself, to Ra. It is the temple of the king Musaraini, a ruler from what will one day be called the 5th dynasty. It's not a tomb to hide the king's body, but an open-air sanctuary designed to capture and celebrate the sun's creative power. You feel a sense of order here, a rightness to the world that your honey-hunting ancestor, with his crocodile dung torch, could never have imagined. You walk through the temple's causeway and enter a chamber known as the Room of the Seasons. The air here is still and cool. The walls are covered in delicate, low-relief carvings, a breathtakingly detailed tapestry of life on the Nile. You see scenes of planting, of harvest, of men wrestling and fishing. It is a perfect, idealized calendar of Egyptian life, a statement that all of creation, every plant, every animal, every human activity, is part of a divine, cyclical harmony. And it is here, among the depictions of agriculture and nature, that you find what you're looking for. It is the oldest story of beekeeping ever told. Your fingers, soft now, not calloused from climbing cliffs, trace the shallow grooves in the limestone. It is the world's first illustrated guide to apiculture, carved for eternity. This single scene, a silent narrative in stone, is the most important historical fact we have about the dawn of beekeeping. It's the Rosetta Stone of honey. The carving shows a sequence of events, read from right to left like the hieroglyphs that float above it. On the far right, you see the apiary itself. The hives are not hollow logs or wild crevices in a rock face. They are man-made. They are long, cylindrical pipes made of clay and Nile mud, identical in form, stacked neatly in a pyramid. This is not nature. This is industry. This is control. Your eyes move to the figures of the beekeepers. They wear simple linen kilts, their bodies lean and muscular. The first man kneels before the stacked hives. In his hand, he holds a small, elegant pot with a spout. A wisp of smoke, artfully carved, drifts from the pot towards the hive entrance. Remember that crude, smelly bundle of dung and reeds? This is its descendant, a purpose-built censer. The beekeeper is gently puffing smoke into the hive to calm the bees, an act of placation before the intrusion. He is focused, his posture one of deep concentration. The next panel shows the harvest. Another man, his arm bare and courageous, reaches deep inside one of the cylindrical hives. There is no grimace of pain on his face, no sense of a frantic smash and grab. His movements, frozen in stone for 4,500 years, are deliberate and calm. He is a professional, not a thief. He understands the bees, and they, it seems, understand him. It's a bit of artistic license, perhaps. Surely, he must be getting stung. Or maybe, just maybe, the strain of bee they worked with was more docile. Or perhaps his calm, rhythmic movements were the key. We can only guess. Then you see the processing, the part of the story that turns the raw material of the hive into a finished product for the palace or the temple. Several men are busy with pottery jars. They are pouring, stirring, and sealing. One figure holds a large comb over a vessel, letting the thick, rich honey drip down. But it's the central figure in this part of the relief that holds the most mystery. He is a man holding a small, round-bottomed jar to his face. He seems to be tilting it, his head cocked slightly. What is he doing? This is where the simple carving becomes a subject of intense debate. Egyptologists and historians still argue whether the beekeeper is simply pouring the filtered honey from one vessel to another, or if something more complex is happening. The hieroglyph above him can be read as to seal or to decant, a simple, practical instruction. But some scholars see more. Is he listening? Is he waiting for a specific sound, the gentle pop of fermentation, perhaps, as the honey is being made into mead, a sacred, intoxicating drink? Or is he smelling the honey, his head inside the vessel's rim to capture the full bouquet of the nectar, judging its quality, its purity, its floral source, like a modern wine connoisseur? A quirky but compelling fringe theory suggests he is neither listening nor smelling, but speaking. He might be whispering a magical incantation into the jar, a spell to purify the honey or dedicate it to a god, ensuring its potency not just as a food, but as a medicine or a sacred offering. The stone is silent on his true intention, leaving us with a 4,000-year-old puzzle. You look closer at the hieroglyphs that caption the scene. You see the symbol for honey and the word for beekeeper, biddy. This is not just a job, it's a recognized, official profession with a name. These men were specialists, respected craftsmen in the cosmic machinery of the kingdom. They were not just providing a luxury good. They were tending to the sacred creatures of Ra, the sun god himself. In one version of the creation myth, the gods wept, and their tears, falling onto the desert sand, transformed into bees. The bees, therefore, were divine messengers, and their honey was a celestial substance, the very essence of a god's tears. To see their work immortalized here, in the sun god's own temple, feels perfectly natural. This wasn't just a sweet treat for the pharaoh. It was a report back to the creator, showing that his world was being well managed. You pull back from the wall, the whole tableau laid out before you. It's a quiet, humble scene of human industry, yet its placement here gives it a profound significance. From the dangerous hunt in the wild cliffs to this orderly, almost ritualistic process, the journey of humanity's relationship with the bee has been immense. The wild, angry buzz has been turned into a productive hum, a sound that now signifies not danger, but the sweetness and stability of the kingdom itself. The carving at Abu Ghorab is a receipt, a proof of purchase for civilization, paid for with patience, courage, and an intimate understanding of the natural world. The cool, silent stone of the temple chamber seems to fade away. The stylized, two-dimensional world of the relief softens, deepens, and breathes. The carved figure of the beekeeper, the biddy, warms with life, and suddenly, you are not just looking at him. You are him. The hot Egyptian sun is no longer a concept, but a real weight on your bare shoulders. The distant sound of priests chanting from the sun temple is the background music to your life. You are a keeper of the king's bees, a specialist living in the great, sprawling civilization of the Old Kingdom. Your life is one of routine and immense, patient skill. You don't live in a palace, nor do you command armies. You live in a small, neat house of mud brick, whitewashed against the heat, in a village that belongs to the estate of a great noble, perhaps even the temple itself. Your world is the apiary, a sun-drenched patch of land near the irrigation canals, where the air is always thick with the scent of flowers and the low, industrious hum of your charges. You are on the clock, so to speak, but the clock is the sun. And the seasons, you rise before dawn, when the air is still mercifully cool. Your first meal is a piece of barley bread, dense and nutritious, and a gulp of water. Your work begins not with the bees, but with their homes. You are a potter of sorts, a mason of mud. You spend the morning by the canal, mixing the rich, dark Nile silt with water and chopped straw, forming the clay into the long, cylindrical pipes that will become new hives. You work with your hands and a few simple wooden tools, shaping the tubes, ensuring the walls are thick enough to insulate from the brutal midday heat, but not so thick that they retain the chill of the night. It's a delicate balance. You then leave them to bake hard in the relentless sun, a process that can take days. There is always a need for more hives. A thriving apiary is a constantly growing one. Later in the day, when the sun is at its peak and the bees are most active, you walk among the stacks. You are a watchman, a guardian. You check for threats. A trail of determined ants can strip a weak colony of its honey in a single night. You look for the telltale webs of the wax moth larvae, a pest that can devastate a hive from the inside out. You chase away inquisitive lizards and birds. There is a quiet satisfaction in this guardianship, in maintaining the mod, the divine order, and balance within your own small patch of the world. And then there are days of high drama. The sound of a swarm. You learn to recognize it, a sudden shift in the apiary's hum, a rising, swirling vortex of thousands of bees taking to the air, their queen among them, seeking a new home. This is a moment of opportunity and crisis. To lose a swarm is to lose future honey, to lose an entire productive unit. So you leap into action. You grab a large, wide-mouthed pot, maybe bang on it with a piece of wood to create a disorienting racket, a technique that seems to encourage the swarm to settle. You follow the swirling cloud, hoping it chooses a low-hanging branch and not the top of a 40-foot date palm. If you are lucky, they cluster, a living, breathing, buzzing chandelier of bees. With calm, steady hands, you position your pot beneath them and give the branch a sharp shake. The entire cluster falls into your vessel. You cover it quickly, and just like that, you have the heart of a new colony, ready to be installed in one of your sun-baked clay pipes. It's a moment of pure, adrenaline-fueled magic. But what is your place in this grand society? Are you just another farmhand, a laborer tilling the soil? This is a matter of some nuance, and historians still argue whether the title of biddy placed you among the ranks of common agricultural workers or elevated you to the status of a specialized craftsman. On one hand, your work is outdoors, it's dirty, and it's certainly physical. You are not a scribe with soft hands and a clean linen kilt. But on the other hand, almost anyone can be taught to pull a weed or carry a water jug. Very few have the knowledge, the calm, and the courage to work with tens of thousands of stinging insects. You are a guardian of a sacred creature, a producer of a substance used in temple rituals, in the pharaoh's own food, and in the finest medicines. This specialized knowledge likely gave you a step up the social ladder, a certain respect in the community. You're not just the guy who smells like smoke and mud. You're the guy who can tame the sun god's tears. Your value is reflected in your wages, though you've never seen a single coin. Money doesn't exist yet. Instead, your world runs on a sophisticated system of payment in kind. Every week or two, an overseer from the estate granary arrives with your payment. It is a quirky but life-sustaining bundle of goods. You receive a set number of loaves of bread and a quota of beer, the two staples of the Egyptian diet. You get a small jar of sesame or morina oil for cooking and for your lamp. And periodically, you receive a length of linen cloth for your clothing. This is your salary. You can't save it up for a big purchase. There's nothing to buy, but you can live on it. You can trade a few loaves of bread with the fisherman for a fresh tilapia, or a bit of your honey for some extra dates from your neighbor. It's a system built on subsistence and barter, a far cry from a 401k, but it works. One afternoon, while patching an old hive with fresh mud, you hear the chanting from the Sun Temple carry clearly on the breeze. The priests are reciting the royal titulary, the 5 great names of the pharaoh. And you hear it, loud and clear, Nisabidi, he of the sedge and the bee. This is a core part of the pharaoh's identity, a mainstream historical fact known from countless inscriptions. The sedge plant represents the kingdom of Upper Egypt, the long valley stretching south. And the bee, the bit, represents Lower Egypt, the fertile, sprawling delta to the north. The king's title literally proclaims him as the unifier of these two lands. You pause, your hands coated in mud. Every time you hear that title, it sends a strange shiver through you. The symbol of half the known world, the emblem of the rich northern lands, is the very same creature you spend your days with. The tiny, formidable insect that lives in your clay pots is the partner of the sedge on the king's crest. In that moment, you are not just a humble craftsman on a provincial estate. You are connected to the very center of power, to the divine king himself. Your work is not just about producing honey. It is an affirmation of the order of the kingdom, a living symbol of the pharaoh's dominion over the north. You, the biddy, are the keeper of the emblem of Lower Egypt. As the sun begins to set, casting long shadows across your apiary, the work is done. The bees have settled, their hum dropping to a contented, gentle murmur. You are tired. Your back aches. But as you look at the neat stacks of hives, a quiet sense of purpose settles over you. You are a biddy. You are a provider of sweetness, a master of a dangerous art, and a small, humble cog in the great, eternal machine of the kingdom. Your life is not one of adventure, like your distant ancestor on the cliffs, but one of stability, purpose, and peace. The last rays of the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and purple, and the air begins to cool. Your day's work is done, but you linger for a moment, watching over your silent city of clay. From a distance, your apiary looks like a sculpture, a series of neat, geometric pyramids rising from the flat earth. It is a monument to order, a testament to human ingenuity, but it is built not from granite or limestone, but from the most humble and abundant materials your world has to offer, the earth beneath your feet and the sun above your head. Let's get our hands dirty, metaphorically, and feel the weight and texture of these homes of clay and Nile. To understand your craft is to first understand the vessel. Before you can be a keeper of bees, you must be a maker of hives. The process begins at the riverbank. After the season of Akay, the inundation has passed. The Nile recedes, leaving behind a thick, generous blanket of black silt. This is the lifeblood of Egypt, the soil that nourishes the grain, and it is the primary ingredient for your creation. You scoop it up with your bare hands, loading it into reed baskets. You feel its cool, slick texture, rich with the organic matter of the river. It smells of wet earth, of decay, and of life all at once. You carry the heavy baskets back to your workspace, a sun-baked patch of ground near the apiary. Here, you mix the silt with another gift of the land, straw. You take the chopped stalks left over from the grain harvest, adding it to the mud as a binding agent. Then comes the real work. You pour in water from a canal and begin to mix, not with a tool, but with your feet. You tread the mixture again and again, the mud squishing up between your toes, the sharp ends of the straw scratching your ankles. It's a slow, rhythmic dance, a form of meditation. You are literally grounding yourself in your work, becoming one with the substance of your craft. Once the clay reaches the perfect consistency, not too wet, not too dry, the shaping begins. There's no potter's wheel here. You build the long, cylindrical hive by hand. Some beekeepers might build it up in coils, like a snake of mud, smoothing the seams as they go. Your preferred method is to pack the clay around a solid core of wood, a log of just the right diameter. You build up the walls, padding and smoothing, your hands constantly wet to keep the surface from cracking. The final shape is a simple, elegant pipe, perhaps 3 or 4 feet long. It's a design born from observation. It perfectly mimics the hollowed logs and narrow rock crevices that wild bees favor. You're not forcing them into an alien environment. You're offering them a 5-star version of what they would seek out themselves. When the shape is perfect, you leave it. The sun, your tireless assistant, takes over. For days, the clay cylinder bakes, the water slowly evaporating, turning the soft, dark mud into a hard, pale ceramic shell. It is here that a small variation in practice exists. Historians still argue whether hives were always made of simple, unfired, sun-baked clay, or if some of the larger, wealthier estates might have used properly fired pottery. A fired hive would be far more durable, waterproof, and resistant to pests, but it would require a kiln and a vast amount of fuel, a true luxury. For you, the sun is enough. It produces a home that is strong, breathable, and best of all, free. Once baked, the hive is ready. You gently remove the wooden core, leaving a perfect, hollow tube. The final touch is to make the lids. You fashion 2 thick, circular plugs from the same clay mixture. One is solid, a simple cap. The other you pierce with a few small holes, just large enough for a bee to pass through. This will be the front door. The genius of this design is not just in its simplicity, but in how it is managed. As you look at your apiary, you see the hives are not scattered on the ground. They are stacked in those tidy pyramids you saw immortalized on the walls of Nusair's Sun Temple. This allows you to keep hundreds of colonies in a relatively small space. a critical feature for producing the vast quantities of honey required by the temples and the pharaoh's court. But the true brilliance of the horizontal hive reveals itself during the harvest. This is the quirky and clever secret of the Egyptian beekeeper, a technique that allows for a sustainable, peaceful collection of honey. When a colony is established, the queen and her brood, the eggs and larvae that are the future of the hive, are almost always located near the front entrance. The bees use the deeper, darker, cooler recesses of the pipe to store their surplus honey. You, as a savvy beekeeper, use this natural tendency to your advantage. When you judge a hive as heavy with honey, you don't rip off the roof and plunge your hands into chaos like your wild hunting ancestor. You practice a kind of minimally invasive surgery. You approach the hive with your smoker, a gentle curl of incense wafting from its spout. But you don't puff it in the back. You apply the smoke to the front entrance. The bees, sensing a threat, do not attack. Instead, their instinct is to protect the queen and the brood, so they retreat deeper into the hive, conveniently moving forward, away from the precious honey stores at the back. Now, you move to the rear of the hive. With a careful hand, you pry loose the solid clay plug that seals the back end. You break the seal. This is quite literally the back-breaking part of the job, a phrase that might have a much more ancient origin than we think. Peering inside, you are greeted with a beautiful sight: pristine combs of white wax, hanging from the ceiling of the pipe, heavy and dripping with honey. The bulk of the colony is a safe distance away at the front of the hive, buzzing in mild confusion, but not outright panic. You can now carefully cut away these honeycombs, leaving the brood combs completely untouched. You take only the true surplus. Once you've harvested your share, you replace the clay plug, sealing the back of the hive once more. The bees will eventually return, clean up the mess, and start storing honey there again. It's an act of symbiotic elegance. No dead queen, no destroyed brood, no colony collapse. Just a clean, simple withdrawal from nature's bank account. You pick up one of your new, empty hives. It is light, yet strong. It smells of dry earth and sunshine. You carry it over to a space in one of the stacks and carefully slide it into place. It sits there, a hollow promise, an empty home waiting for a new family. It is a perfect piece of technology, born entirely of this land, for the creatures of this land. In its simple, cylindrical form, it holds the potential for sweetness, for medicine, for sacred offerings, and for the continued hum of prosperity in your small corner of the kingdom. As true darkness settles over the Nile Valley, the world transforms. The sharp, practical realities of the day, the weight of the mud, the heat of the sun, the threat of pests, give way to a softer, more mysterious consciousness. You sit near your silent stacks of hives, now just dark shapes against a sky blazing with stars. In the quiet of the night, you are not just a craftsman. You are a theologian. Your work is not just about producing a commodity. It is a sacred duty, steeped in the stories that explain the world, the gods, and your place within it all. The clay pipes you have built are more than homes. They are tabernacles for the living tears of a god. From the time you were a small child, sitting at your grandfather's feet, you have heard the story. It is a story from the Zep Tepi, the first time, when the world was new and the gods walked the earth. At the center of all creation was Ra, the great sun god, the self-begotten father of all. He sailed his golden bark across the sky by day, and through the treacherous underworld by night, bringing light and life to the cosmos. And the story goes that one day, in that primordial dawn, Ra wept. The reason for his tears is a matter of sacred mystery. The temple priests offer many versions. Perhaps he wept with joy, his heart overflowing as he gazed upon the perfection of his own creation, the mountains, the river, the sky. Perhaps he wept with sorrow for the struggles his children, humanity, would have to endure. Or maybe he wept from loneliness, the singular burden of being the ultimate source of all things. The reason is less important than the result. His divine tears, shimmering with celestial light, fell from the heavens. They did not splash into the dust and vanish. Where each tear touched the earth, a miracle occurred. The droplet of divine sorrow and joy sprouted gossamer wings. It grew 6 tiny legs and a body painted in stripes of gold and black. It trembled, and then it rose into the air, no longer a tear, but a living creature, humming with the captured energy of the sun. It was the first bee. This is the central, mainstream fact of your faith as a beekeeper. The bees are not simply another of Ra's creations, like the ibis or the crocodile. They are born of his very essence, a direct, physical manifestation of his being. This knowledge changes everything. It elevates your profession from agriculture to priesthood. The apiary is your temple, the stacked hives are its shrines, and you are the humble servant tending the flock. The constant, gentle hum that fills your days is not the sound of insects. It is a hymn to the sun, a million tiny voices whispering the name of their creator. This divine origin infuses every aspect of your work with meaning. When you use smoke to calm a colony, you are not just tricking them, you are offering incense to a divine presence. When you harvest the honey, you are not taking a product. You are gathering a sacred substance, a concentrated form of Ra's emotions, liquid gold that holds the memory of creation. And because of this, the bee holds a special place in the Egyptian understanding of the soul. The human soul, the bee, is often depicted as a bird with a human head, an entity that can fly free from the body after death. But the bee is also sometimes referred to as a bee. Historians still argue whether the bee was seen as a literal manifestation of a god's soul on earth, a tiny, mobile piece of Ra himself, or if the connection was more symbolic, an analogy for the bee's freedom and its connection to the heavens. As you watch a single bee return to the hive at dusk, its legs heavy with pollen, you feel the truth of it in your gut. It is a messenger, a traveler between the world of flowers and the inner sanctum of the colony. Just as the bee travels between the world of the living and the do-it, the underworld. This divine connection also explains why honey is more than just a sweetener. It is a tool for cosmic diplomacy. You know the stories of the Eye of Ra, the fierce goddess, often in the form of a lioness like Sekhmet, who acts as the sun god's enforcer. Sometimes, in a rage, she abandons her father Ra and flees into the Nubian desert, taking the life-giving heat and light with her. The world withers, the gods are in panic, and Mot, the fundamental order of the universe, is shattered. A delegation must be sent to appease the furious goddess and persuade her to return. This is a quirky, but vital, part of your mythology. And what do you offer a raging lioness goddess to soothe her temper? You offer her the sweetest things: music, dance, intoxicating beer, and above all, honey. Jars of your finest honey would be laid at her shrine, the scent rising as a peace offering. Your work, therefore, is not just for the nobleman's table. It is an essential ingredient in the maintenance of cosmic balance. When you decant a jar of golden honey, you are preparing a substance that can calm a god. No pressure. This sacred status echoes in the titles of your king. The reason the pharaoh is the he of the sedge and the bee, the Nisabidi, is not just because the bee represents the industry of the delta. It is because the bee is a child of Ra, and the pharaoh is the son of Ra. The symbol links the king directly to the creator god, legitimizing his rule through a shared connection to this divine creature. Your humble profession, your partnership with these tiny winged souls, is a mirror of the king's own relationship with his divine father. As the night deepens, you rise and walk to the central stack of hives. The air is cool on your skin. You unstopper a small clay jar at your waist and dip your finger inside. It comes away with a single, thick, amber drop of honey. You find a clean leaf and place the droplet upon it, a tiny, gleaming jewel in the moonlight. You set this offering down on the platform before the main entrance of the hive that houses your strongest colony. It is a gesture of gratitude, of reverence, of partnership, a small gift for the creatures who share their divine essence with you. You are the keeper of the tears of Ra, and it is a job you perform with a quiet, soothing, and profound sense of honor. The night of quiet reverence gives way to a morning of purpose. The drop of honey you left as an offering has been dutifully collected by the bees, taken back into the heart of the colony. It is a cycle. A gift given is a gift returned. And now you must prepare a much larger gift, one destined not for the gods in their heavens, but for the god on earth, the pharaoh. The world has continued to turn, and the quiet, ordered society of the old kingdom has blossomed into the dazzling, powerful, and almost impossibly wealthy empire of the new kingdom. The capital is no longer near the northern pyramids, but deep in the south, in the sprawling, magnificent city of Thebes. And the demand for your honey has never been greater. Today, you are not just a beekeeper, you are a purveyor to the king. The honey you have harvested has been carefully filtered through clean linen cloth, removing any stray bits of wax or pollen. It is now a flawless, viscous, amber liquid. You pour it carefully into high-quality pottery jars, not the rough, utilitarian pots of a village market, but elegant vessels from the best workshops, their clay smooth and fine. Once filled, you seal the tops with a plug of fresh clay and impress upon it the seal of your master's estate. This is a mark of quality, a guarantee that this is honey fit for a divine palate. The jars are loaded onto a riverboat, nestled carefully in beds of straw. You travel with them, guarding the precious cargo as the boat glides north along the Nile. You pass temple after magnificent temple, their painted pylons blazing with color in the sun. The river is a highway of commerce and power, bustling with barges carrying everything from cattle and grain to giant blocks of granite and soldiers returning from campaigns in Syria. And on your humble boat, you carry one of the most prized commodities of all. You arrive in Thebes, a city that overwhelms the senses. It is loud, crowded, and smells of 1,000 things at once. Spices from the east, incense from the temples, roasting meat from the cookshops, and the perfumed oils worn by the nobility. You make your way to the sprawling complex of the royal palace, a city within a city. Here, the mud brick of your village is replaced with gleaming, whitewashed walls, towering gateways, and courtyards filled with lush gardens and shimmering pools. You are a simple man from the countryside, and you feel a profound sense of awe and perhaps a little intimidation. You are delivering your honey, your tears of RA, to the very center of the world. Your jars are accepted by a stern-faced palace scribe who notes the delivery on a papyrus scroll before they are whisked away into the royal storehouses. From there, your honey will flow into the various arteries of palace life. Much of it will go to the kitchens, a place of organized, frantic chaos. Here, the honey is used in ways that would astonish your old kingdom ancestors. It is not just for sweetening water or being drizzled on bread. It is a key ingredient in the sophisticated cuisine of the empire. You can almost smell it. Wild ducks being roasted over charcoal, their skin painted again and again with a glaze of honey, spices, and a bit of salt until it becomes a crisp, glistening, sweet and savory shell. You can imagine the bakers, kneading dough mixed with crushed dates, nuts, and a generous helping of your honey to create the dense, rich cakes known as shidu, a delicacy reserved for the highest nobility. Honey is also a form of liquid wealth, a crucial part of the imperial economy. You've seen the tribute lists carved on temple walls. When the pharaoh returns from a successful campaign in Regenu, the lands of Syria-Palestine, the defeated kings send tribute to show their loyalty. Alongside the gold, silver, copper, and lapis lazuli, the lists often include a specific, quirky, and telling demand. Hundreds of jars of the fine, light-colored honey from the hills of Canaan. Your honey, born from the black land of Egypt, is a treasure, but even it competes on the international stage. It is a food, a luxury good, and an instrument of foreign policy. But its most profound destination is not the pharaoh's table, but his tomb. For a king who is a god, life on earth is but a brief prelude to an eternity in the afterlife, and he will need provisions. This brings us to perhaps the most stunning, mainstream historical fact about your craft. Millennia from now, in what will be called the 20th century, a team of British explorers will uncover the tomb of a young king, Tutankhamun. In the darkness of his burial chamber, surrounded by golden chariots, jewel-encrusted thrones, and statues of the gods, they will find simple, sealed jars of clay. And when they open them, after more than 3,200 years, they will find your honey. It will have darkened with age, but it will still be honey, unspoiled, aromatic, and, incredibly, still perfectly edible. The presence of this honey, your honey, in the tomb of the eternal king, raises a fascinating question. Historians still argue whether the honey placed in tombs was intended as literal food for the deceased Ka, their life force or spiritual double, in the afterlife, or if its primary role was symbolic. Was it just part of a packed lunch foray? journey of millions of years? Or was its purpose far more magical? Remember, this substance was born from the tears of Ra. It is incorruptible, seemingly immune to the decay that affects all other foods. By placing this eternally preserved substance in the tomb, were the priests trying to magically bestow its quality of incorruptibility upon the pharaoh himself? The honey wasn't just food. It was a potent symbol of eternal preservation, a promise that the king's body and soul would resist the forces of decay and endure forever. Just like the sweet nectar beside him, your work for the day is done. You imagine one of your sealed jars being carried in a solemn procession into the Valley of the Kings. It is placed carefully among the gilded treasures in the cool, silent darkness of the tomb. The stone masons seal the entrance, and your honey begins its long, lonely vigil. It will outlast the memory of your name, the estate you worked for, and the entire empire you served. It is a humble, sweet, and silent witness to eternity. Your simple craft has touched the sublime. The silent, sealed tomb is a place of eternity, a testament to honey's power to endure. But you do not live in the silent tomb. You live in the bustling, ever-changing world of the living, and here, endurance is not enough. Here, you need abundance. Life along the Nile is governed by cycles, the most important being the annual flood and the growing seasons that follow. In any one place, the explosion of flowers, the nectar flow that the bees depend on, is a brilliant but frustratingly brief event. A few weeks of intense production, and then it's over. Your bees are left with little to do but maintain the status quo. For an empire at its peak, for the insatiable demands of the temples and the pharaoh's court, the status quo is never enough. You need more, and so you turn to the Nile itself for an answer. The river is not just a source of water, it is a highway. If the flowers in your local area have faded, surely there are flowers blooming somewhere else. Why wait for the world to come to you when you can take your world with you? This simple, revolutionary idea gives rise to one of the most ingenious practices in the entire history of agriculture: migratory beekeeping. You will not just keep your bees, you will shepherd them on a grand tour of all of Egypt. You find yourself on the banks of the river in Upper Egypt, the south, where the sun is warmest and the flowers bloom first. It is late evening, and the air is cool. Before you is not a grand ship, but a wide, sturdy raft constructed of papyrus reeds or a low, flat-bottomed wooden boat. Its deck is covered with your precious cargo, dozens, perhaps even 100 of your cylindrical clay hives, stacked neatly in their familiar pyramid shapes, secured with rope. You moved them here during the night, when the cool air and darkness ensured every single bee was safely inside its home. To the casual observer, it looks like a floating pottery collection, but you can feel the life within it, a contained, dormant energy, a low hum that vibrates through the deck into the soles of your feet. You untie the mooring rope and push off into the current. The great river takes you. You are now the captain of a floating apiary. Your life for the next few months will be dictated by the flow of the water and the blooming of the flowers. This is a practice well attested by later observers, Roman writers like Pliny and Columella would write in awe of the Egyptians who send their bees on a voyage, creating a movable countryside to cheat the seasons. This isn't a fantasy. It is the pinnacle of your craft. You drift slowly downstream, which is to say, north. Your journey is guided by a unique kind of map, a calendar that exists not on papyrus, but in your deep knowledge of the land. You know that the fields of clover near a certain town will be reaching their peak bloom right about now. That is your first destination. For days, you float. Your life is simple and solitary. By day, you guide the raft with a long steering oar, keeping it in the main channel away from sandbars. You eat dried fish and bread. By night, you listen to the sounds of the river, the splash of a fish, the grunt of a hippopotamus in the reeds, the distant call of a jackal, and always the gentle, reassuring hum from your cargo. It must be a strange partnership. A million tiny roommates who, if you were to trip and knock over a hive, would make you regret it instantly. You arrive at your destination and moor the raft against the bank, right beside a vast, green field carpeted with sweet-smelling clover. As the sun rises the next morning, the bees emerge from their clay homes. They pause for a moment, reorienting themselves in this strange new landscape, and then they discover it, a paradise of nectar, a feast laid out just for them. The hum of the apiary rises in pitch and volume, a sound of pure, focused industry. For the next week or two, you will stay here. Your bees will work from sunup to sundown, flying back and forth from the clover to the raft, and the weight of the hives will increase daily. How do you know when it's time to move on? You use a quirky and clever method. Each morning and evening, you weigh one specific, representative hive. You have a simple balance scale on the raft for this very purpose. For days, the hive gets heavier, a satisfying sign of success. But one evening, you weigh it and find it has gained no weight since the morning. The nectar flow here is over. The field is spent. That night, under the cover of darkness, you once again untie the rope and let the Nile carry you further north, in search of the next bloom. Perhaps the bean fields of a temple estate, or the fragrant citrus groves of a nobleman. The scale of this practice is a matter of some debate. Historians still argue whether this was a widespread, common practice among all beekeepers with access to the river, or a highly specialized technique employed only by the largest temple or state-run apiaries. An operation like this requires resources, the boat, the knowledge, the freedom to be away from a single home for months. It seems likely it was the province of major institutions like the Great Temple of Amuniasare at Karnak, which owned enormous tracts of agricultural land all along the river and had the organizational power to manage such a complex, mobile enterprise. Your journey continues for months, a slow, winding procession down the length of Egypt. You follow the spring as it moves north, a bee herder chasing a movable feast. You leave the fields of Upper Egypt behind and enter the sprawling, fertile lands of the Delta, where the Nile splinters into a dozen branches before meeting the Great Green, the Mediterranean Sea. This is your final stop. The hives are now incredibly heavy, laden with a blend of honeys from a dozen different floral sources from across the entire country. The harvest you will get from these hives is 3 or 4 times what a stationary apiary could ever hope to produce. You finally moor your raft for the last time in a delta port. The long voyage is over. You stand on the deck, the scent of the sea now mixing with the sweet smell of honey. You have not just been making honey. You have been an integral part of the rhythm of the land, a weaver connecting north and south, field and flower, bee and river. You have guided the tears of RA on a pilgrimage, and in return, they have given you a bounty that will sweeten the lives of queens and commoners alike. It is a profoundly peaceful, deeply satisfying feeling, the hum of the bees a final, soothing chorus to your great Egyptian road trip. The long, slow journey on the river is over. Your floating apiary has come to rest in the lush expanse of the Nile Delta, and the hives are heavier than they have ever been, pregnant with the nectar of all of Egypt. The grand, strategic phase of your work is complete. Now, the tactical work begins, the harvest. This is intimate, close-quarters work that requires not a raft and a steering oar, but a specific and sophisticated set of tools. You find a clean patch of ground, lay out a reed mat, and begin to arrange your toolkit. It's a humble collection of objects, but each one is perfectly suited to its task, a testament to generations of accumulated wisdom. First, and most important, is your smoker. You have long since graduated from the crude, smoldering bundle of dung and reeds used by your wild hunting ancestors. Your tool is a purpose-built censer, a piece of terracotta pottery shaped by a skilled craftsman. It has a rounded body to hold the embers, a handle to keep your hand from the heat, and a tapered spout to direct the smoke. This is the very tool you see depicted in the reliefs at Abu Ghorab, a mainstream piece of technology that has been central to your craft for 1,000 years. You fill it with glowing embers from a small fire and sprinkle on a handful of dried herbs. The smoke that curls from the spout is thick, white, and carries a pungent, not unpleasant smell that you know confuses the bees' senses and masks their alarm signals. Holding its warm, earthy handle, you feel like a priest preparing for a ritual, which, in a way, you are. Next, you consider protection. The tomb and temple reliefs always show beekeepers with bare faces and chests, their expressions serene as they work among the swarms. But you know this is an artistic ideal, a way to show the harmony between man and nature, or perhaps just to depict the human form clearly. In reality, while you have a deep understanding of the bees, you are not immune to their stings, and a sting on the eyelid can swell your eye shut for days. So, you take up your veil. It's nothing so elaborate as a modern beekeeper's suit. It's a simple, quirky, and effective piece of linen, woven loosely enough for you to see through, but tightly enough to prevent a bee from getting through. You drape it over your head, letting it hang down over your face and neck. The world becomes a slightly hazy, filtered place. It's not perfect. An enterprising bee can still find a way in if you're not careful, but it provides a crucial buffer of confidence. It's the difference between working with calm precision and flinching at every angry buzz that zips past your ear. Now, you need a blade. The honeycomb, with its delicate wax structure, must be cut cleanly from the hive. For this, you have a special knife. Here, your toolkit could vary greatly depending on the wealth of the estate you work for. Historians still argue whether the knives used to cut the honeycomb were made of simple flint, which was cheap and could be made incredibly sharp, or of more valuable copper or bronze, which were more durable but also a sign of a high-status workshop. A bronze knife is a fine tool, a gift from your master, something to be cared for and sharpened by a smith. But today, you are using the older magic. Your knife is a beautiful piece of worked flint, its edges napped to a razor sharpness. It feels cool and organic in your hand. It will dull after harvesting a few hives, but a new one is easily made. It is the soul of simplicity and effectiveness. With your smoker, veil, and knife, you are ready for the bees. But the harvest requires another set of tools, your pottery. You have an entire nested set of jars and bowls, each with a specific function. First, a wide-mouthed bowl that you place beneath the rear opening of the hive to catch the comb as you cut it free. It's heavy, gritty, and functional. From there, the comb goes into a larger, deeper vessel, your crushing pot. Here, you use a simple wooden paddle to break up the comb, mashing the wax and releasing the thick, golden honey trapped within the cells. The result is a sticky, wonderful mess of honey, wax, and the occasional unlucky bee. To separate them, you turn to your strainer. You place a large, clean jar on the ground and fit a wide-meshed piece of woven linen over its mouth. Then, you slowly pour the contents of the crushing pot onto the cloth. The beautiful, pure honey drips through, thick and slow, leaving the wax and other impurities behind. Watching that first stream of filtered honey catch the sunlight as it falls into the jar is one of the most satisfying moments of your entire year. The sound it makes, a soft, thick patter, is the sound of pure success. Your toolkit is complete with a few other small necessities. A large bird's feather, used to gently brush bees from a piece of comb you wish to inspect without angering them. A skin of water, and a bowl for washing your impossibly sticky hands between hives. A few extra clay plugs to reseal the backs of the hives once the harvest is done. Each item is simple, made from the earth, the river, and the fields around. You pick up your smoker and your flint knife and approach the first stack of hives. You are a far cry from the terrified hunter on the cliff face, armed with only a rock and raw courage. You are a professional. Your tools are an extension of your body, an embodiment of your knowledge. They allow you to perform the delicate surgery of the harvest with minimal disruption and maximum yield, a calm and methodical dance that has been refined over centuries. The world seen through your linen veil is soft and quiet. The only sounds the hum of the bees and the gentle puffing of your smoker. The jars of honey are sealed, the tangible result of your long journey and careful labor. But not all of this. Liquid gold is destined for the bakeries of the palace or the dark stillness of a tomb. Some jars are sent to a place where their power is needed most urgently, the per-ankh, the house of life. Your role now shifts. The calloused hands of the beekeeper soften into the precise, knowing hands of a SWNW, a physician. You are no longer in a sun-drenched apiary, but in the cool, quiet halls of a temple scriptorium, the intellectual and spiritual heart of the community. The house of life is not a hospital in the way you might imagine it. There are no wards with rows of beds. It is a place of immense knowledge, a library, a university, and a pharmacy all rolled into one. The air smells of old papyrus, of incense, and of the pungent, earthy scents of the minerals and dried herbs. that line the shelves in countless small pottery jars. Here, under the patronage of gods like Thoth, the master of knowledge, and Sekhmet, the fierce goddess of both plague and healing, the secrets of the body and the soul are studied. And in your hands, you hold one of the most important texts of all, a long, heavy scroll of the finest papyrus. This is a medical text, perhaps the Great Ebers Papyrus or the Edwin Smith Papyrus. As you unroll it carefully across a long wooden table, its nearly 70 feet of text is revealed, covered in the neat, flowing cursive of hieratic script, written in black ink with key headings and measurements highlighted in red. This scroll is a treasure trove of medical knowledge, containing over 800 prescriptions and magical spells for everything from gastrointestinal complaints and skin diseases to eye ailments and traumatic injuries. And as you scan the ancient columns of text, one word appears again and again: honey. In fact, honey is mentioned in over 500 of the remedies recorded here. This is a mainstream historical fact that underscores its incredible importance. It is not a minor folk remedy. It is a cornerstone of Egyptian pharmacology. Its most vital use is in treating wounds, a common necessity in a world of agricultural accidents, construction injuries, and military campaigns. A young soldier is brought to you, a deep, angry gash on his forearm from a sparring match gone wrong. The wound is raw, inflamed, and weeping. Left alone, it will fester, the flesh will rot, and the soldier may die a slow, agonizing death from the infection. But you have honey. First, you wash the wound with water, maybe boiled and cooled. Then you take a clean linen cloth and liberally apply a thick, sticky poultice of pure honey directly onto the raw flesh. The soldier winces, but the honey's initial sting quickly gives way to a soothing sensation. You cover this with another layer of clean linen to form a bandage. You have just performed a medical procedure that modern science would recognize as profoundly effective. The honey, being hygroscopic, draws the moisture out of the wound and out of any bacteria within it, killing them through dehydration. Its natural acidity and low-level hydrogen peroxide production create an environment where microbes simply cannot thrive. But did you, the Egyptian physician, understand the science? Historians still argue whether Egyptian physicians understood why honey worked as a disinfectant, perhaps attributing its power to its divine origins as the tears of Ra, or if they had a more empirical, albeit basic, grasp of its inherent properties. Through pure observation, you don't know about bacteria or pH levels. What you know is this: wounds treated with the gods' tears do not putrefy. Wounds treated with honey heal clean and fast. For you, the magic and the mechanism are one and the same. It works because it is divine, and you know it is divine because you can see that it works, that honey's role extends far beyond wounds. It is the great facilitator, the golden panacea that makes other medicines work. You need to prepare a remedy for a dignitary's persistent cough. The scroll recommends grinding dried acacia leaves into a fine powder. You do so with a stone mortar and pestle. But how do you get the patient to ingest this bitter, dusty powder? You mix it into a spoonful of honey. The honey's sweetness masks the unpleasant taste, and its thick, viscous nature makes it a perfect vehicle to soothe an irritated throat. You are an ancient mixologist, using honey as the base for 1,000 different medicinal cocktails. Some of these cocktails can seem quite quirky, even bizarre, to a modern mind. You might consult the papyrus for an eye infection and find a prescription calling for a mixture of honey and, believe it or not, crocodile dung to be applied as an ointment. For another ailment, you might mix honey with ground malachite or the fat from a hippopotamus. These recipes show a fascinating blend of practical knowledge. Honey as an effective base, with ingredients chosen for their magical or symbolic properties. The crocodile is a powerful river deity, the hippopotamus a symbol of fierce protection. By mixing their essence with the divine tears of Ra, you are creating a remedy that works on multiple levels, attacking the disease in both the physical and metaphysical realms. And that is the final, crucial element. After you have applied the honey bandage to the soldier's arm, your work is not done. You place a hand over the wound and begin to chant a soft, rhythmic incantation, a spell to drive out the malign spirits of disease. You might call upon Isis, the great healer, or the lioness-headed Sekhmet. beseeching her to turn her peaceful, healing face toward the patient. The honey is the treatment for the body. The spell is the treatment for the soul. To the Egyptian mind, you cannot heal one without healing the other. They are two halves of a single, powerful cure, a golden panacea. For the whole person, your jar of honey is not just a tool of medicine. It is a tool of magic, a bridge that allows divine power to bring comfort and wholeness to suffering mortals in the quiet halls of the House of Life. You have seen how honey can soothe the suffering of the living. The golden liquid has been decanted into medicinal jars, a testament to its divine healing power. But the hive's gift is not yet spent. After the honey has been drained and filtered from the combs, a sticky, fragrant mass of wax remains. You gather this precious residue, wash it in warm water, and melt it down, filtering it one last time through a fine linen cloth. The result is a block of pure, clean beeswax, known to you as manek. It cools into a solid, pale yellow substance that smells faintly of honey and 1,000 flowers. This wax, less glamorous than its liquid sibling, is in many ways the more versatile and vital product of the hive, weaving its way into every aspect of Egyptian life, from the sacred rituals of death to the bustling commerce of the river. Your first destination with this block of wax is the Wabit, the pure place, where the embalmers perform their sacred work. This is a place of profound silence, heavy with the smells of natron, resins, and fragrant oils. Here, the goal is not to heal the body, but to preserve it for eternity, transforming a mortal shell into an eternal home for the Ka and Ba. You are an embalmer, a priest of Anubis, and beeswax is one of your most essential tools. After the body of a noble has undergone its long drying process in a bed of natron salt, it is a shrunken, desiccated thing. Your task is to restore a semblance of life and, more importantly, to seal it against the chaos of the outside world. You take a piece of the soft, pliable beeswax and carefully use it to plug the nostrils and ears. You use it to seal the eyelids shut. Most critically, after the embalming incision on the flank has been stitched closed, you cover the stitches with a large, thick plate of beeswax. Before it hardens, you might press a seal into it bearing the wedjat, the protective eye of Horus, a powerful symbol of wholeness and healing. The purpose of this seems obvious. It's a waterproof sealant, but its significance runs deeper. Historians still argue whether the beeswax used to seal the body's orifices and incisions was chosen for its practical waterproofing qualities alone, or primarily for its symbolic properties. This is not just any sealant. It is a pure substance, born from the tears of a god, untainted by the earth. By sealing the body with beeswax, you are symbolically rendering it incorruptible, protecting it with a divine shield for its journey into the afterlife. From the sacred, you move to the sinister. Beeswax is also a key ingredient in Egyptian magic, particularly in execration rituals. You are now a lector priest, consulted by a general before a major military campaign against rebellious tribes in Nubia. You take a piece of beeswax and warm it in your hands until it is soft. With skilled fingers, you sculpt it into a small, rough figure of a man, representing the enemy chieftain. You take a sharp reed stylus and scratch his name and the names of his followers into the wax. Then, you bind the figure's arms and legs tightly with linen thread, chanting an incantation that magically binds the real chieftain and his army. For the final, decisive act of this quirky but deadly serious ritual, you might throw the wax figure into a blazing fire. As it melts and contorts, you believe you are magically destroying the enemy's will to fight, ensuring the pharaohs' victory. It is sympathetic magic in its most potent form, but the wax that can be used for destruction can also be used for sublime creation. You move now to the noisy, dusty workshop of a metal sculptor. Here, beeswax is the key to one of the most brilliant inventions of the ancient world, the lost wax casting process. This mainstream technology allows you to create intricate metal objects that would be impossible to carve or forge. Your task is to create a solid bronze amulet of the goddess Batet for a wealthy client. First, you take a piece of high-quality beeswax and painstakingly carve it into a perfect, miniature statue of the cat goddess, complete with every tiny detail. This wax model is the heart of the whole process. Next, You carefully encase this wax model in a thick layer of fine clay, leaving a small channel or two leading from the surface down to the wax. You let the clay dry completely. Then you place the entire clay block into a kiln. As it heats up, the wax inside melts and runs out through the channels. It is lost, which gives the technique its name. What remains is a hardened clay mold containing a perfect, hollow negative of your original sculpture. The final step is the most dramatic. You take a crucible of molten, glowing bronze and pour it carefully into the channels of the mold, filling the void left by the wax. After the metal has cooled and solidified, you break away the clay mold. And there it is, a perfect, gleaming bronze batet, an exact replica of your wax original. From the impermanent to the permanent, all thanks to the humble bee. The utility of beeswax extends even to the most practical, large-scale projects. You find yourself in a shipyard on the banks of the Nile, amidst the clamor of hammers and the shouting of foremen. Giant riverboats are under construction there, cedar planks carefully fitted together. But wood, even the finest cedar from Lebanon, is not perfectly waterproof. You stand before a huge cauldron, a fire blazing beneath it. Inside, blocks of your beeswax are melting down into a bubbling, fragrant stew, perhaps mixed with a bit of tree resin to make it harder. You and other workers take brushes and paint this hot, liquid wax mixture over the entire hull of a new ship, paying special attention to the seams between the planks. The wax cools to form a tough, flexible, waterproof barrier. This sealant keeps the ship afloat, enabling trade, transport, and the projection of military power. The entire economy of the kingdom, in a very real sense, is held together by beeswax, from sealing the dead for eternity to sealing ships for the river, from creating magical curses to creating timeless art. The applications are almost endless. It could be used to seal wine jars, mixed with pigments for painting, or even used in cosmetics. The block of yellow manek is the quiet, utilitarian soul of the hive. It lacks the immediate, joyful appeal of honey, but its contribution to the stability, security, and beauty of your civilization is arguably even greater. It is the ultimate proof that there is so much more to the bee's gift than just sweetness. You have seen how the hive's physical gifts, the honey and the wax, permeate every corner of Egyptian society, from the pharaoh's table to the embalmer's slab. These tangible products are profound, but the bee offered your civilization something more abstract, more fundamental, and arguably even more powerful, a symbol. To understand this, you must leave the workshops and apiaries behind. You must enter the quiet, scholarly world of the temple scriptorium and become a scribe. You sit cross-legged on a mat, a fresh roll of papyrus across your lap. Before you is your palette, holding 2 cakes of ink, one of black soot and one of red ochre, and a pot of water. In your hand is your brush, a slender reed, its tip chewed to the perfect fineness for making the sacred signs. Your teacher, a wizened old priest whose hands are permanently stained with ink, points to a character carved into the temple wall before you. It is the sign for the bee. You lean in to study it. This is not a quick sketch or a crude approximation. It is a work of careful observation, a respectful portrait of the insect in profile. You can clearly see its head, its thorax, and its segmented abdomen. Its 2 wings are delicately outlined, held flat against its back. Its 6 legs are precisely drawn. The quirky level of detail in the hieroglyph, even in the most monumental inscriptions, tells you that this is a creature of immense importance. You dip your brush in the black ink and practice drawing it. The Egyptian word for bee is bjt, a sound you might vocalize as biddy. As your hand learns the elegant curves of the sign, you begin to learn its deeper meaning. Your teacher explains that this symbol, this tiny insect, represents all of Lower Egypt. The entire sprawling, fertile Nile Delta, the richest and most populous region of the country, is encapsulated in this single sign. But why? Why a bee? Historians still argue whether the bee was chosen as the symbol for Lower Egypt because of the delta's well-earned reputation for producing vast quantities of the finest honey, or if the connection is older and more deeply rooted in a pre-dynastic Delta kingdom that might have revered the bee as a tribal totem or a principal deity. The practical explanation seems logical. The region was, in essence, the breadbasket and honey pot of Egypt. But the reverence with which the bee is treated suggests a spiritual connection that predates even the first pharaoh. And it is with the pharaoh that this symbol finds its ultimate expression. Your teacher guides you as you learn to write the king's most important title, his throne name, or prenomen. This is the name that expresses his very essence as a ruler. It begins with two signs, a balanced pair that defines the nature of his kingship. First, you draw the nisu. It's a picture of a sedge plant, a common reed that grows along the riverbanks in the south. This sign represents Upper Egypt, the long, narrow valley that stretches down to the border of Nubia. Then, right next to it, you draw your bee, the biddy. The two signs together form the title Nisa Biddy, he of the sedge and the bee. This is a mainstream historical fact, the foundational title of every pharaoh from the first dynasty onward. As you write it, you realize its profound political genius. The king is not simply called the king of Egypt. His title is a declaration of duality, a perpetual acknowledgement that his kingdom is a fusion of two distinct lands. The sedge of the south and the bee of the north are presented as equal partners in the union, held in perfect balance, or mot, by the power of the pharaoh. Once you learn this, you see it everywhere. It is carved 30 feet high on the pylon of the Karnak temple. It is painted in exquisite detail on the golden shrines of Tutankhamun. It is stamped onto official jar seals and written on tax-collecting papyri. Every time anyone in Egypt read the king's formal name, they were reminded of this union, and they saw the humble bee as the emblem of half of all civilized creation. It's an extraordinary status for an insect. Imagine a modern world leader, being known as the president of the eagle and the honeybee. It elevates your small, buzzing business partner to a level of symbolic importance on par with the mightiest predators and the most powerful gods. The very language you are writing reinforces these connections. The word for honey is bit. The word for beekeeper, the profession you have studied in your journeys, is biddy. The word used to represent Lower Egypt in the king's name is also biddy. This web of sound and meaning is no accident. It links the product, the producer, and the entire political territory into one seamless concept, all embodied in the elegant hieroglyph you are now perfecting on your papyrus sheet. You remember the story of your beekeeper ancestor from the Old Kingdom, hearing the priests chant Nisa Biddy and feeling a strange sense of connection. Now, as a scribe, you understand the intellectual and political architecture behind that feeling. The bee's place in the royal titulary is a direct consequence of its divine birth from the tears of Ra. Only a creature of such sacred origin would be worthy of representing the kingdom and symbolizing the king. You dip your brush in the red ink to draw the determinative, the small silent sign that clarifies the meaning of a word, and with a final, steady stroke, your work is done. You have not just learned to write a word. You have deciphered a cornerstone of your culture, understanding that the bee's constant hum is the background music to the song of Egyptian power. Its elegant form a foundational character in the story of your nation. The scribe's papyrus scroll may tell a story that lasts for millennia, and the king's title carved in stone may seem to stop time itself. But your life, the life of a beekeeper, is not measured by such static things. Your life flows and ebbs with a much older and more powerful clock, the rhythm of the river Nile. You live through a year not of 12 months, but of 3 great seasons, each with its own character, its own challenges, and its own sweet rewards. To understand your craft fully is to walk through a year in your sandals, feeling the land change beneath your feet. The year begins with the season of Ake, the inundation. It starts in the heat of summer, when the star Sirius, which you call Sopdet, rises in the pre-dawn sky. This is the signal. Far to the south, the monsoon rains have fallen, and the great river begins to swell. Slowly at first, then with inexorable force, the Nile overflows its banks, swallowing the fields, the paths, the world you know. Your village, built on slightly higher ground, becomes an island. The familiar patchwork of green and brown fields dissolves into a vast, placid, muddy lake. For the farmers, it is a time of enforced rest. For you, it is a time of patience and preparation. Your bees, of course, cannot forage on fields that are underwater. Their world has shrunk to the immediate vicinity of their hives. What do? And what do you do with them? Historians still argue whether the bees went into a state of relative dormancy during the peak of the inundation when foraging was impossible, or if beekeepers actively moved their hives to higher ground or even onto rafts to seek out sparse patches of bloom on the edges of the floodplains. For you, on this particular estate, the apiary is already on a raised mound, safe from the flood. But the bees are confined. They're buzzing a low, monotonous hum of waiting. This is your season for maintenance. With the land at rest, you have time to focus on your equipment. You spend your days by the water's edge, gathering the fresh, rich silt deposited by the flood to fashion the new clay hives you will need in the coming year. You sit in the shade, patching the cracks in old hives with a mixture of mud and straw. You inspect your pottery, ensuring you have enough clean, sealed jars for the eventual harvest. It is quiet, methodical work. During this lean period, you also practice a quirky but vital bit of husbandry. For your most productive colonies, the ones with the strongest queens, you provide a supplemental feeding, a thin syrup made from water and crushed, low-quality dates, offered in a shallow bowl near the hive entrance. It's a small gesture to ensure they have the strength to survive the flood and be ready for the explosion of life to come. Then, after 4 long months, the waters begin to recede. The season of parade, the emergence, has arrived. The land reappears, coated in a fresh, glistening layer of fertile black soil. And almost overnight, life erupts. Green shoots press through the mud. The world, once brown and watery, turns a vibrant, electric green. For the bees, this is a paradise reborn. For you, this is the season of vigilance and growth that as the first. Clover and bean flowers open. The hum of your apiary changes. The low thrum of acai becomes a high-energy roar of activity. The bees pour from their hives, rediscovering a world overflowing with nectar and pollen. Your primary job is to watch and wait. You monitor the colonies, judging their strength. You watch for the telltale signs of a coming swarm. The appearance of large queen cells on the edges of the comb, a restless, crowded energy in the hive. When a swarm does emerge, a swirling vortex of thousands of bees, you must be ready. You spring into action, capturing the precious cluster in a wide-mouthed pod and installing them in one of the new, dry hives you so patiently crafted during the inundation. This is the season where your apiary grows, where you split strong colonies and nurture new ones. You might perform a small ritual, a piece of local folklore, offering a drop of honey from last year's harvest to the earth to ensure the new flowers are sweet and plentiful. You are a shepherd guiding your flock as they multiply and thrive on the bounty of the rejuvenated land. The sun climbs higher and hotter in the sky, and the green fields of parade slowly turn to the gold of ripening grain. This signals the start of the final season, Shimu, the harvest. The river shrinks to a shallow stream within its banks, and the land grows dry and cracked. The heat can be brutal, a suffocating blanket that shimmers over the fields. While the farmers are busy cutting the wheat and barley, you are preparing for your own harvest. The hives are now heavy, laden with the nectar of the growing season. Now you bring out your toolkit: the smoker, the veil, the knife, the pots. You work through the hottest part of the day, when most of the bees are out foraging, to collect your sweet prize. It is sticky, dangerous, and exhausting work, performed under a punishing sun. You take the heaviest combs, leaving enough for the bees to survive on. You bring your bounty back to your shaded workshop and begin the slow, satisfying process of crushing the combs, straining the honey, and rendering the wax. Your entire year has been building to this moment, the culmination of your patience and your partnership with the Nile's rhythm.as Shimu draws to a close. A stillness once again falls over the land. The harvest is in, the earth is tired and thirsty, and a hazy torpor settles in the air. All of Egypt is waiting for the star, waiting for the river to swell, waiting for the great, reliable wheel of the seasons to turn once more. Your life is a circle, not a line. There is a deep, soothing comfort in this eternal repetition, in knowing that just as the flood always recedes, the flowers will always bloom, and the bees will always transform them into liquid gold. The great wheel of the seasons, turning from inundation to growth to harvest, feels like it could spin forever. For 1,000 years, then 2,000, it does. Your life as a beekeeper is anchored to this reliable, soothing rhythm, a cycle that seems as eternal as the stone temples. But no earthly cycle remains unbroken forever. The power of the native pharaohs, once absolute, begins to fray. The new kingdom, with its dazzling wealth and imperial might, fades into a long, slow twilight. Your Egypt is invaded by Libyans, then by Nubians from the south, then the mighty Persian Empire from the east. The divine king in Thebes becomes a distant figure, a vassal, a memory. And yet, through all this turmoil at the top, your life in the village apiary continues. The Nile still floods, the bees still swarm, and the demand for honey, for medicine, and for sweetness never wanes. The great rhythm of the land is stronger than the fleeting ambitions of kings. Then comes a change so profound it will reshape your world. A young, charismatic conqueror from a place called Macedon sweeps across the known world, and his name is Alexander. He is declared pharaoh in Memphis, but when he dies, his empire splinters. His brilliant general, Ptolemy, takes control of Egypt, declaring himself king and founding a new dynasty. Suddenly, your masters speak Greek. The center of power shifts. From the ancient inland capitals to a new, gleaming city on the Mediterranean coast, Alexandria. You are still a beekeeper, your hands still skilled in the old ways. You still build your hives from Nile mud and follow the seasons. But now, you answer to a new kind of bureaucracy. A Greek official from the local administrative center, the Nome capital, arrives with a papyrus scroll. He does not speak your language well, and you do not speak his at all, so you communicate through a translator. He is not interested in the sacred origin of the bees or the stories of Ra's tears. He is interested in numbers. This is a hallmark of the new Ptolemaic rulers, a mainstream historical fact gleaned from thousands of surviving papyri. They sought to manage Egypt like a fantastically profitable business. The official wants to know exactly how many hives you manage. He records the number. He will be back after the harvest to record your yield of honey and wax, from which the king will take a hefty tax. Your sacred craft has been entered into a ledger point one day. The new Greek landowner of your estate, a retired soldier granted this plot for his service, comes to inspect your apiary. He has been reading scrolls by Greek thinkers like Aristotle and is full of new ideas. He sees your long, cylindrical clay pipes and frowns. He tells you of a quirky, different kind of hive used in his homeland, perhaps woven from wicker or with removable wooden bars on top that allow a beekeeper to inspect the combs without breaking the back of the hive. He suggests you should try it. You listen politely, nodding, but inside you are deeply skeptical. What does this foreigner know of the Apis mellifera lamarcki, the spirited, aggressive bee of Egypt? What does he know of the baking heat of the Shima season? Your family has been using these clay pipes for 50 generations because they are perfectly adapted to this land and these bees. You thank him for his suggestion, and, as soon as he leaves, you continue crafting your hives the way they have always been made. Your tradition is not born from theory, but from millennia of practice. It endures, and so, for 3 centuries, a strange dual world exists. The rulers are Greek, the language of government and high culture is Greek, but the rhythm of the land remains Egyptian. The migratory bee rafts still float down the Nile, a practice that fascinates your new masters. The old gods are still worshipped, though often they are merged with Greek deities into hybrid figures like Serapis. And your honey is still used, in the old ways, to sweeten food, to heal wounds, and to be offered at the temples, even if a portion of it is now taxed to fund a library in Alexandria or a war in Syria. Then comes the final, dramatic change. The last of the Ptolemaic rulers, the formidable Queen Cleopatra, makes her fatal gamble with Rome and loses. Your kingdom ceases to be a kingdom. It becomes a province, the personal property of the Roman emperor. The tax collectors are now Roman, and they are even more efficient and demanding than the Greeks. Egypt is the granary of Rome, and every product, from wheat to linen to your precious honey, is now a commodity to be exploited for the benefit of a distant, foreign power. The pressure to produce intensifies. The demand for wax to seal documents and waterproof ships for the Roman fleet is immense. The demand for honey to satisfy the sweet tooth of the sprawling city of Rome is insatiable. This leads to a great debate among those who would later study this time. Historians still argue whether the intense monetization and taxation under Roman rule ultimately led to a decline in the quality and spiritual significance of beekeeping, turning it from a sacred craft into a mere cash-generating industry, or if it simply made the existing system more efficient and widespread. Did the magic begin to drain away when a jar of honey was valued not for its connection to RA, but for how many denarii it could fetch in the market? Perhaps. Yet, even under the heavy hand of Rome, the core of your practice survives. The Roman writers of this period are the ones who describe your floating apiaries with such admiration, recording your ancient techniques for a wider world. The horizontal clay pipe hive remains the standard, its simple, effective design unchanged. By new rulers, the echoes of the pharaonic age are persistent. The land itself seems to protect them. You stand by your hives as the sun sets. The world is Roman now. The hieroglyphs that told the story of the Nisabidi, the sedge, and the bee are understood by fewer and fewer people. New faiths are whispering through the land. But the bees in their clay homes pay no mind to Caesar. Their hum is a sound that was ancient when the first pharaoh was crowned. It is a quiet, soothing, resilient sound, an echo of a timeless Egypt that has weathered every conqueror, a promise that as long as the Nile flows and the flowers bloom, there will be sweetness. The hum of the bees in the Roman-era apiary fades into the silence of the centuries. Empires rise and fall, languages are born and die, and new gods replace the old. The desert sands, patient and persistent, drift over the mud brick villages, the noblemen's estates, and the stone temples. The apiaries crumble, their clay hives dissolving back into the earth from which they were made. A great quiet descends. For over 1,000 years, the story of the ancient beekeeper is lost, a silent memory buried beneath the dunes. Then, a new sound breaks the silence. It is not the hum of bees, but the gentle, rhythmic scrape of a trowel against sand and the soft whisk of a brush on stone. Your perspective shifts once more. You are no longer a participant in the ancient world, but a seeker of it. You are an archaeologist, kneeling in the dust under the hot Egyptian sun, and your job is to listen for the faintest echoes of the past. Your work is slow, methodical, and often unrewarding. You are not searching for golden masks, but for the subtle clues of daily life. And today, you find something strange. In the excavated ruins of a small village, you notice a series of faint, circular discolorations in the soil, arranged in neat, stacked rows. There are no artifacts here, no solid objects, just these ghostly footprints in the earth. This quirky and exciting discovery is what archaeologists call a ghost hive site. For centuries, an apiary stood right here. The clay pipes have long since disintegrated, but their presence compacted the earth beneath them, leaving a permanent, subtle record of their existence. You can map the size and layout of an entire beekeeping operation from these faint stains in the sand. You continue your work, and nearby, you find something more tangible, a shard of pottery, the side of a broken storage jar. It's a common find, but as you brush the dust away, you see a dark, resinous residue clinging to the inside surface. This is treasure. Carefully, you bag and label the shard. Its journey is not over. It is just beginning. You are now in a sterile, air-conditioned laboratory, a world away from the heat and dust of the dig. Before you is a high-powered microscope. You have taken a minuscule sample of that dark residue from the pot shard, prepared it on a glass slide, and now you peer through the eyepiece. The past comes into focus. Suspended in the ancient, crystallized honey residue are hundreds of perfectly preserved pollen grains. This is the science of palynology, and it is a time machine. The tiny grains, each from a specific type of flower, look like alien jewels. You see the spiky sphere of a thistle, the triangular shape of a sedge, the unmistakable three-lobed grain of a white clover. This is a mainstream archaeological technique of immense power. By identifying and counting these pollen grains, you can reconstruct the environment around that village thousands of years ago. You now know which flowers the bees were visiting. Was this honey made from the nectar of cultivated bean fields, or from wild acacia trees on the desert edge? The pollen tells you the story, and sometimes the story is astonishing. You might analyze a potsherd found in the northern delta, and discover pollen from a plant that grows only in the far south, near Aswan. In that moment, you have found concrete, physical proof for the floating apiaries described by Roman writers. You can trace the entire journey of that migratory beekeeper, a ghost on the river, through the microscopic messengers he unknowingly left behind. But the pot holds more secrets still. Using another technique, gas chromatography, mass spectrometry, you can analyze the chemical makeup of the residue itself. This has opened up a fascinating debate. Archaeologists and chemists still argue whether certain residues found in jars indicate the production of pure honey, or if the presence of specific yeast strains and fruit residues points to a more widespread production of mead, honey wine, or other blended honey-based beverages than is traditionally assumed. Perhaps that jar you found wasn't for the baker, but for the brewer. Was honey a sacred food, or was it also the key ingredient for a sacred party? The science allows you to ask these more complex, more human questions. You think back to the most famous sweet discovery of all, the jars of honey found in Tutankhamun's tomb. For decades, it was simply an amazing anecdote. But now, with these modern techniques, we can understand it on a deeper level. Analysis of that 3,000-year-old honey could reveal the specific floral landscape of Thebes during his reign, a snapshot of the flowers growing in the gardens of the boy king. All the pieces of the puzzle begin to click into place. The ghost hives show you where they worked. The magnificent reliefs at Abu Ghorab show you how they worked. The papyrus scrolls tell you what they called things and how they used the products in medicine and magic. And here, in the lab, the pollen and chemical residues provide the final, irrefutable link. They allow you to taste and smell the ancient world, to verify the stories, and to uncover new ones. You pull your eyes away from the microscope, blinking in the bright light of the lab. For a moment, you felt a direct connection to that beekeeper. From millennia ago, the pollen grains are tiny messages sent across an ocean of time, and you are the first person to read them. It is a quiet, profoundly intimate discovery, a sweet whisper from the past, finally heard. The scientist's tools are put away, the archaeologist's trowel is cleaned, and the last grain of ancient pollen has told its story. You are left here, in the quiet of your own room, with the full, sweeping arc of this humble history. You have walked in the calloused sandals of a prehistoric hunter, risking everything for a taste of sweetness. You've stood in awe before the first stone carvings of an orderly apiary, a blueprint for a new partnership. You have lived the life of the biddy, the professional beekeeper, a man whose craft was so important its symbol became the emblem for half a kingdom. You felt the cool Nile mud as you shaped a hive with your own hands and sailed with it down the great river, chasing the ghost of a scent on the wind. You have seen the honey on the pharaoh's table and sealed within his tomb. You've mixed it into medicines in the house of life and have understood its power as a gift from the sun god himself. You've worked with the versatile, practical wax, shaping it for art, for magic, for industry, for eternity. You've deciphered the sacred hieroglyphs and felt the weight of the bee as a symbol of power and unification. You have lived by the river's rhythm, through the great cycle of the seasons, and you have watched as empires rose and fell, your craft a quiet, constant hum beneath the noise of history. Through it all, from the first wild hive in a cliff face, to the last tax jar under Roman rule, a deep, intuitive wisdom runs like a golden thread. It's a wisdom that modern science is only just beginning to articulate. In the 19th century, a man named Lorenzo Langstroth would formally discover the principle of bee space, the precise, magical gap between 6 and 9 millimeters that bees instinctively leave as a passageway, a space they will neither build comb across nor seal shut with propolis. This discovery revolutionized modern beekeeping. But you know the truth. You know that the ancient Egyptians, with their long, cylindrical hives and their practice of harvesting only from the rear, understood this principle in their bones. They didn't have a name for it, but they respected it. They knew to give the bees the space they needed, and the bees, in turn, gave them their treasure. It was a partnership based on mutual respect, an unspoken agreement. This leads to a final, gentle question to ponder as you drift. Historians and philosophers still argue whether humanity truly domesticated the bee, or if the bee, with its irresistible gift of sweetness, subtly domesticated us. Did we tame it? Or did it coax us into a new way of life? It manipulated our deepest cravings, encouraging us to abandon the dangerous hunt in favor of building its safe, comfortable homes. It trained us to plant fields of clover and to protect it from pests. It rewarded us with food, medicine, art, and light. From this perspective, the beekeeper is not a master, but a devoted servant. A soothing thought that for 5,000 years, we may have been working for the bees, and that work has never truly stopped. This is the most beautiful part of the story. In the quiet, rural corners of modern Egypt, along the same riverbanks and canals, the hum continues. Beekeepers, descendants of that long, unbroken line, still tend their hives. And in some places, you can still see them. The horizontal hives made of clay and Nile mud, stacked in familiar pyramids, almost identical to the ones you saw carved on the Sun Temple of Nusayr-Ini for 1,500 years ago. The shapes are the same, the bees are the same, and the golden honey they produce is the same. The ancient wisdom endures, not as a relic in a museum, but as a living, breathing, humming practice. The long echo of the pharaoh's apiary has never truly faded, and now the story is complete. The journey that began with a single bee on a desert flower has come to its gentle, soothing close. The details of the reliefs, the names of the Roman emperors, the scientific terms for pollen, can all begin to soften now, their edges blurring as you settle deeper into your rest. Let the vivid images of the past recede like the Nile's floodwaters, leaving behind only a sense of peace, a feeling of connection to something timeless and profoundly calm. The hum of the ancient apiaries, which has been the background to our entire journey, can now merge with the soft, ambient sounds of your own room. That constant, industrious, and gentle vibration was the sound of a civilization's quiet heart, a rhythm that endured through dynasties and droughts. And now, it can become the rhythm of your own slow, steady breathing. Let the unbroken hum of eternity be the soft whisper that guides you now across the threshold of consciousness into a quiet and restorative sleep. The story is over. Let the dreams begin.